It's me, Johnny, and with me I've got DJD and Farmer.
Hey, what's shaking?
Howdy.
And chilling over there in the back in the booth, we've got Craig, who I have been neglecting the last few episodes. And Craig, I apologize. I am so sorry. And I wanted to start this week talking about updates, needing to update software and stuff. So, how's that going, everybody? How you all downloading your updates?
Well, it's kind of like going into a stream. It's always like one of those things. If you don't do it beforehand, it'll be that week that they had an update and you didn't update before stream, and then you're sitting there like, well, I guess I should have done that.
I just miss the days when you could purchase something and you get everything that's included in it, and then you don't have to worry about it, and it just works. I miss those days.
You sound like an old man.
Or it's just broken and stays broken and it's never fixed.
Yeah.
It's just broken and it never gets fixed. Yeah, and you're just like, it broke. Remember when you bought a bad game and it was just bad?
It just was bad.
You didn't have people 10 years later be like, oh, did you know they fixed it? It's a good game now. Did you ever go back
this
to
is
it?
A good game now?
It's good now. And you're just like, do I really have to go? And you go back and everything's different.
Basically a completely different game, Some of those
I would like
games.
to remind everybody that I share a studio with Chiho. So if you hear Chihori talking super loud, that's why. Now she's not even going to look at me. She's quiet. I was playing Apex with Logan. Logan got a ROG Ally handheld computer. And he was like, oh, why don't we play Halo? Because then Caitlin will play Halo. And for some reason, I have to basically completely re-download Halo Infinite. There was some kind of update or something that I downloaded and then it ran and it was corrupted. And so now it's just it's downloading 94 gigabytes. Remember when you could just play games? Remember that?
I miss those
it's
days.
the whole it's the whole thing of getting the customer into the middle space of, oh, well, you're not actually playing the game. You're in the zone of the store, how do we keep them in our store longer? I mean, Valve's got an easy platform for you, just hey, here's some more sales. Buy this game. Get this.
Sure, but they also don't allow you to buy anything. You just have to wait there and watch the loading bar, right? If I could browse the shop or whatever, it's okay, well, this is kind of like Cracker Barrel, I'm going to have to wait 2 hours, but hey, they've got a nice store. I can just browse around or whatever.
I did recently buy Journey, a game I never played. Are you guys familiar with that game?
Actually, a really good game, yeah.
I've heard it's really good. I've seen some really beautiful visuals. There's a music artist I really love, and on YouTube, his channel's called Red Means Recording, and he did this video with visuals from Journey, and he made some very beautiful background music. I'm very excited to play it. But man, just to give a little clarification here for the people listening, David was in here first, and then Farmer and I came in, and David's microphone needed an update. His microphone software needed an update, which cut his audio, which led to me and Farmer just staring at David while he's trying to speak, and
he's clicking as fast as he can,
and the software still isn't working.
Just watching him get angrier and angrier, just watching, but also playing it super cool. D's a real cool customer. He plays it really cool, but yeah, he's very upset.
I tried to.
You have to know his. You have to really know his body language to understand those little signs that show that
the little signs like the veins popping out of his neck.
I have two annoyances, and the first is having to wait for updates that you don't expect, right?
Oh my god, that's right.
One of the most annoying things. If I was a Tesla owner, I would go apocalyptic if I had to wait to drive my car. I would not be able to handle it. That would just drive me insane. I would lose it.
Does that happen?
I have no idea, but I assume it does.
Wouldn't it be funny? Wouldn't that be funny? You turn on your car and they're like, oh man, we downloaded the update last night, but we didn't install it.
Wait the rest of the day. You've literally had plans work for one thing and all the other stuff you have to get done and you can't.
So that's one of my biggest annoyances. The other is having to log into everything and not being able to remember your password and having to recover that password and having to go through like a 10-step process to get it.
Especially the security codes.
Yeah.
They're getting so much more in depth these days and so annoying.
My favorite is the CAPTCHA that has you select like all the images of a bus or whatever. And like, no matter how you try, no matter how much you think that square may or may not be like including that like half of a bus, you're wrong no matter what.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you can't get it right, and then they make you start over from the beginning.
And they're like, well, clearly you're
favorite.
a robot. You didn't get that, so clearly you're a robot. Like,
yeah.
Haven't you seen the meme where it's like we thought what makes us human is like our ability to like feel and such, but actually what makes us human is the ability to select all the boxes that contain a bicycle.
No, I literally went through one yesterday because I was doing a bunch of different stuff like that, and it's so annoying. But I literally went through like I think 7 out of 8. I went to 8 out of 8, and then they're like, "Oh, you got one wrong. Start over at the beginning." Are you kidding me?
You know what really annoys me is companies laying off 100% of their employees. That one really gets me. Have you guys heard that about Humble Games? That they laid off all of their employees.
Yeah, I heard of that about. Yeah.
For those who don't know, this last week, Humble Games, which honestly I'm not super familiar with Humble Games. I just knew about like the Humble Bundle. But Humble Games is a video game publisher who primarily focuses on indie games, and they announced that they were doing a restructure. And what that restructure was is that they brought 36 of their employees in, and they told them, which I guess is everybody, that they're going to be let go and the company is shutting down.
Restructure? What?
Yep.
What in the world does that mean if you're just like shutting down? That's not the same thing.
And according to this article, according to Chris Radley, a former Humble Games employee who left in 2022, the entire Humble Games staff have been replaced by a third-party consultancy. So the owner has been trying to sell Humble Games, apparently, and has not been doing well. Okay, so Humble Games is known for publishing games like Void Bastards, Forager, and Signalis. I am familiar with Forager. Do you guys know those other games?
Can't say that I do.
I think we actually played, or at least I think Void Bastard might have been the one that like changed its rating after it came out or something. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah.
And in the same vein, it was on Game
Pass at one point.
I think literally, so this was published July 24th. On July 31st, not long later, Bungie announced a massive round of layoffs. 220 roles, or 17% of Bungie's workforce, were eliminated due to, quote, financial challenges. Pretty wild, man.
And then 150 employees were actually reassigned to Sony. So they also don't work at Bungie. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's technically more than that. So you know what that means, guys? That you guys weren't spending enough in silver.
Yeah, apparently.
Over there in Destiny. Come on, guys.
I mean, speak for yourself. I spent a lot.
Yeah, I did my fair share during the time, but, you know. Jeez.
Yeah, no, this
is
is incredibly disappointing considering like how critically acclaimed Final Shape is. Apparently, according to internal sources, it didn't sell as well as Lightfall, which I could buy. I could understand that. Lightfall, I think, sold actually really well when it came down to it, even if it wasn't
I would agree.
as well liked. Final Shape was like critically acclaimed, but the sales just weren't there. But like, how often can you get people to keep on investing in a game that like keeps on like, you know, kind of like giving you like really good content and then sometimes subpar content and then really good content and then sometimes subpar content, you know? I mean, like,
well, and everybody can see the writing on the wall too.
So long. Right? Yeah.
I think that's part of it. The writing was on the wall. I mean, they're obviously saying this is close to the end, if not the end. You know, I haven't really played Final Shape.
Well, there's that, and then also like that, the way that they handled the layoffs last year put a bad taste in just about everybody in the industry's mouths, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like not letting them say goodbye, shuffling them out, letting them know day of and everything. Like, I mean, like, and letting go such a sizable amount of people, and then like with a pretty like cold statement of like, yeah, we're just not meeting projections. We missed projections by 75% or whatever. Like, I mean, like,
Right.
yeah, it's like, well, what else? Like, how? Like, that's a problem with leadership then at that point.
Right.
If they're
Exactly.
projecting that wrongly.
I did read something about the CEO. Have you guys read anything about that yourselves?
No, for Bungie?
About like saying that he kind of overextended, like trying to, get the game to, I guess, perform and all that. I don't know how much is true, but that would make sense,
Yeah, like so. Jason Schreier, friend of the podcast. Obviously, we know him very well. Not at all, actually, but he occasionally has some. He occasionally has some pretty good sourcing. A lot of people tell him things. His article kind of covered that, like, apparently it was a make or break situation for Bungie, where they would be insolvent if they didn't sell to Sony, if someone didn't pick them up. But also that, like, in that attempt to sell to Sony, that they way overpromised. And so that kind of leads to these kinds of situations where if you overpromise and you don't deliver, then the people who bought you are going to kind of have certain expectations and then deliver on certain promises that they made where they would take over if you don't meet your goals. And that seems to be what's happening. We don't have any confirmation of that, but that seems to be basically what's happening, is that Sony's slowly going to start like taking over Bungie directly now. Which is a shame.
We've seen the same thing from the Xbox's point of view. Whenever something's not selling as well, or they come in and restructure it. So that could very well be what's going on that end as well.
Well, and you guys know the age-old saying, overpromise and underdeliver, right? That's That's the age-old saying there. That's what you got to do.
That's kind of like gaming in a nutshell.
Yeah.
It's the Pierre Molyneux tactic, of the old Fable games and all that. Yeah. It's just, it's so disappointing to see because, like, Final Shape was actually really, really good. And so, like, I mean, like, to see them kind of, like, really start responding to, like, all these, like, feedback items that they've gotten over the years and, like, really start making strides towards fulfilling those in an attempt to, like, get that audience back, like, I think they did pretty much all that they could in the past year, and it still wasn't enough. That's really disheartening. And to be told, too, apparently, allegedly, that, like, hey, if Final Shape does really well, we'll be fine. And then Final Shape does pretty well. Not as well as, Lightfall, but then have all these layoffs happen is pretty unfortunate.
Yeah, and for people who are looking forward to the next step in Destiny, like, what does that do? For Bungie, or the future of Bungie, the future of Destiny, the future of the game that they were working on.
Right. Well, like, Marathon is still in progress and Destiny is still ongoing, but that's it. Like, that seems to be, like, all that we have confirmation of. Like, that's it.
Well, Humble is owned by the same company that owns IGN. And, Bungie being owned by... Which Humble, it's a little different because it's a publishing company, right?
Right.
Versus like a game studio. But one of the things I think that's just so frustrating. So, like, on one hand, I feel like the normal response that people have is just that it's very disappointing and people are very upset about these layoffs, right? That's the take I see. And I don't see quite as often. I have seen a few times people be like, stuff like, hey, they underdelivered and, like, stuff like this happens, Like, the company's overextended and it's not, financially making it. And, this is what happens. And I don't see that take quite as much, but I have seen it, right? Of like, hey, you know what? Like, why this happens in all industries.
Right.
Right. Where, stuff gets restructured and people lose their jobs. But I think there's a couple of things to consider on it. Consideration number one, it takes a lot of money up front to make games. Right?
Yes, this is true.
You invest a lot of money
investment, for sure.
to pay, and you really need that to come through.
And with Destiny, it's an ongoing expense, right? It's not just a one-time you're done. It's like constantly, and apparently it's one of the most expensive games, like just because of the, the quality of like the assets, the cutscenes, the amount of people that you have to like keep that running. Yeah,
The crappy story,
And all the voice actors that you're getting, I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of them are fairly big names. I mean, that stuff adds up so quickly. I mean, let me tell you.
No, exactly. Right. And it's a big investment I think about. And it's something that, movies, video games, like it's a weird thing, but these companies are footing that bill. Right. And they're expecting a return on their investment. So there is that. But also on the flip side, there's like so much money in video games. And you have like the leadership making these bad calls. And it almost feels like you don't really see them get punished for it. Right,
Yeah.
you see people way
I was gonna
lower
bring that
down losing their job,
Mhm.
but like the CEO and like the CFO and the ones who are actually taking the risks aren't getting cut, aren't getting pay cuts. Like they're doing it in a way that's still safe, right? So they can be like, hey, I tried everything. I'm not going to lose my job. But then you let go 20% of the workforce to make ends meet. Like, yeah, I understand that payroll is super expensive for any company. Payroll is a very expensive thing, but still, like a lot of that trimming needs to happen at the top.
Yep. I think that like what the bad part of what I term as maximum capitalism, or max cap for short, is that essentially
the term originated here.
is like, and what most other people call late stage, but I don't think it's necessarily an indicator of how late in the capitalism you are, so much as just unregulated, is that like the people at the top are very hard to get rid of unless there's some kind of accountability to be had. And that's really, that needs to happen. You need to have accountability for the people at the top. The people at the top are not able to just declare immunity and just get away with like making bad leadership decisions that drive their company into the ground. I mean, like in Bungie's case, it could be a case of there not being a good decision, but that also means that you don't lie to your potential investor who's procuring you, and overpromise. And then when they come for the bill, you just shrug your shoulders, and say, oh, well, I guess we can do some more layoffs. Like, I mean, you don't push people into crunch time and like try to churn out content as a last minute like attempt to get people back into your game, which you should have been trying to do the entire time, just because you were so secure in your own vision that you were ignoring all feedback, right? And then
it seems kind of like a little bit of a lazy management. Yeah, and
also don't nerf all my builds. How about that? Don't nerf all my builds.
There's always a lot of like more nuanced situations than anyone wants to give, but there's also pretty clear like people that need to be held accountable for decisions, right? And the whole point of having someone in charge who makes a lot of money is that that person is held accountable, right?
Right.
If they're given that much power and that much reward for being in charge, then there needs to be consequences when they fail.
Yeah, and they need to be held to those consequences and not just like scapegoated to, okay, we're just going to cut all these employees that they were trusting me, when I hired them, or they were part of our company. They were trusting me, to have a steady job and, constant work to do, and that I would have their back. But when it comes down to it, when, I made a bad call and, you're up against the fence.
Well, that, and it's like, oh, but like, what are they going to do if they get laid off and stuff like that? And it's like, well, there are 220 people who are in that same position that CEO would have been if they resigned. There are 220 people who are scrambling, figure out what to do next, at least, from Bungie. And it's just, it's a real shame.
And that's not counting the people last year, I mean, like, too. Yeah.
I really like Bungie. I mean, a huge part of that, growing up with Halo, but to see them go through this, it's just like, what is going on over there?
Right. Yeah. Well, and like, again, like, I think this latest one was kind of like a tolling of the bell of like Sony's taking over. And like, that sucks that they might not have that much control over, when it comes down to it. At this point, there might not be that much that Bungie could have done to like avoid this. If Final Shape did as well as it seems to have done, and like this still happened, like then there should have been clear communication from up top, and then also like the leadership needs to change because the leadership obviously brought us to this situation where there are no good options or whatever. That this was inevitable. And that's if it was that way. I don't know for sure. Obviously, I'm not on the inside there, but
You're not our inside guy, D, on this? What?
What it seems like is what happened. You know, they went independent for a while, and they're probably making, you know, the CEO was, you know, making mistakes back then. Obviously, you know, it's probably a ripple effect. He was over promising back then, and so it's just led to this point right now. Which I mean, it's an obvious conclusion that, you know, you have to have somebody backing you if you're not making the money at the end of the day. And then once you do get controlled by a company like that, and again, once you're not meeting those promises and making those, you know, those dollar marks or whatever, you're not hitting the stock marks like your projections and everything like that. I mean, it's an obvious into the conclusion that you're going to have to restructure or something like that. But the way that they handled it, I think, could have been better, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, like, with that overpromise, they were able to get full autonomy from Sony to be able to do whatever they wanted, right? But then they weren't able to meet the promises that they made to get that. So, I mean, like, would it have been better maybe for them to have, like, you know, been like, okay, well, like, we won't be multi-platform then. You can put our game wherever you want it. Like, I mean, maybe that would have been a better move, is to, like, let go of some of the, like, you know, the things that they really wanted as a studio, and like not have promised so much, you know, to make that more of an even trade. But like,
it would have been better to sacrifice a little bit. Yeah.
I
totally agree.
But it's it's also so hard to, like, you know, it's so easy to like judge it, like when we're this far in and we see where the road clearly leads, you know. It might not have been like that easy to see, but like at the same time, like, this is where the road led. The person who led us here needs to be held accountable. Like, that's ultimately what I keep on coming back to.
But it's also hard because Destiny is so big. It's made so much money, all of that stuff. It is a little hard. And I understand, again, like payroll, right? Keeping people on the payroll, making sure everything's running, you know, writers, programmers, right? Like artists, voice, all of this stuff you're keeping on payroll, you know, as you guys keep exploring. But it's also like, where did it all go? You know what I like? You see these other big games that are also ongoing, and it's like, what? Like, and I understand Destiny has more story than something like Apex or something like Fortnite does. But again, it's just wild that it ended up here.
Some of it would be like, you know, continuing this business model. Like David was saying earlier, it's super expensive, and I think chasing the seasons, chasing something that's kind of new, you know, when Destiny started doing it, you know, is like a whole different way of thinking about gaming. You know, I could easily see where, you know, they've had a lot of misses too, and that could be rolled over. Like, okay, we didn't do so well. We actually were in the red, but, you know, keep rolling it over to the next one will pay it off, you know, and it could be very easily slippery slope to the fact of you know, not hitting those like, marks and continually tanking.
Hey, we got this great player base here that really loves our game, plays our game a lot. Let's just ruin the game for them.
But also, like, what other live service game has done well for this long? Because I feel like every other game that's tried to be live service has been pretty much like axed almost immediately because, like, oh, hey, this is too expensive or whatever. Like, this isn't worth like continuing down this path. And like, I mean, like, you see Anthem, you see Avengers, you see like game after game attempt the live service model and just fail, like almost immediately.
And I think
like
you should
almost right out the gate.
Like a clarification between live service, but there's also like this story-driven co-op live service, because for Anthem and Avengers and what would Suicide Squad trying to do that as well.
Yeah.
For those, you know, you've got Apex, which is like a juggernaut, right? You've got Fortnite, which is a juggernaut. And these are also live service games, but they are a little bit different. You're not Like they have, it's I don't know, a by match kind of game instead of creating. I don't know, Destiny. It's kind of in a thing of its own. It's not an MMO, but it kind of is.
Well, and then also like I mean like these games the only one I think like WoW would almost be more comparable just because of how much content is in Destiny and then like how
Right.
often they like create new maps or whatever and like have like entirely new like story things and like cutscenes and all of that. Like I mean like they're constantly having to create new assets, new weapons, new abilities, all of that.
But see,
Like
this is a good example of stuff that totally could be cut back too. Because on one
yeah.
hand, there is a lot of stuff to do in Destiny. Then how come also at the same time there's nothing to do? It's like, do you want to do dares again?
Well, that's
kind of a deal.
Well, that's the
You wanna do
problem
this
though with
again?
like guidance more than anything, though, right? Like, I mean, like we've talked about this before, but like, I mean, like the problem with Destiny is you go in and you're overwhelmed with like a ton of quests and not really any real direction, right? It's like being set on an ocean and there's plenty of islands around you to go to, but like you just don't really know like what's on those islands or like which one you feel like visiting or whatever.
That's why you swim to the closest one.
Well, yeah, there is that, but I think coming against that too, though, it doesn't take long. I mean, I'm still playing the same strikes I was playing year one Destiny 2. You know what I mean? Like we're if you go in the strike playlist, you're playing strikes that have been strikes for a long time, or it's the same strike backwards. Like it, and you get into that. I mean, the dungeons are cool. There's a lot of those things that are cool, but at the same time, it doesn't take long to feel done. I mean, when I was playing Destiny weekly, I would have finished everything for that week for the next reset before I could get new drops. And I know it's not like everything, like I didn't do the raid or I didn't do this, but it's like I did the dungeon, I did the Nightfalls, I did the Vanguard. Maybe I would have done Gambit, right? Did everything but Crucible. And it is doable in that sense. But I mean, I suppose WoW is the same. And I guess, like you said, maybe it's not an attainable thing. Even through it, we say Destiny, Bungie got independent and could do what they wanted. But really, did they? Because they like left Microsoft and did Destiny, but then they were like up with Activision, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then they left Activision, and then they got picked up by Sony. And it's like, really, as a studio, they've tried to go independent, but they've always needed big money behind them to be able to accomplish what they wanted to do.
Right. Well, and the problem with that too is that when you're a subsidiary under another company, your profits aren't yours. They go straight to your parent company. Right? And so like when it comes down to like Destiny making money, like that money is like going directly to Sony and then Sony's footing the bill for all of Destiny's costs. And so if that doesn't match up with Sony's like expectations, then they have kind of every right to be like, like, hey, this is not what you promised us, this is not what we were expecting. Like, I mean, unfortunately, we're going to have to make some changes, which sucks, but that's the price of being a subsidiary under like and having that extra budget, and like
as much as you want to think of it as a gamer aspect, when it comes down to it, it's really people looking at the numbers, when it comes to a business decisions, they're going to make business calls.
And like, this is my frustration too with like corporations and everything is like the people at the top never are really looking at the like daily or like the minutia or like the people affected or anything. They're looking at numbers on a spreadsheet. And on one hand, it makes it a lot easier to make certain decisions, but on the other, those decisions affect lives, right? And that's always like,
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, you have to have a good balance of both because like you said, if you're just looking at numbers, then you make these decisions that could be really, bad. Could actually sometimes you have to make those make actually certain investments. And if you don't know what you're cutting or what you're giving your money into, then, it's just a gamble. But yeah, I hate it again when the companies at the top, the people at the top in these meetings, like have no idea what they're doing.
Well,
and like sometimes they can see the numbers. They can like see the numbers and misinterpret them, right? And like oh, this, I mean, like we see it with Ubisoft all the time, right? Like I mean, like with the whole like assuming that players want one thing because their numbers are down when really nobody asked for that, and like them pivoting,
My dad's actually kind of going through the same thing with his companies. Like they sold off certain businesses that really worked and were actually making profits. and they put all their eggs in one basket with this company that they've known for a long time wasn't profitable. But they decided they wanted to go all in with something that already wasn't profitable. But they thought, oh, we can streamline it, we can make it better. We're going to go all in and we can make profit. And it's not been good. I could have told them that if they had me in the meeting, just paid me some, consultant fee. I mean, I could have told them because I used to work down there, and I could have told them.
Well, and it's easy when you look at, if you're just looking at numbers, to be like, well, if we can bring down payroll by 17%,
right?
If we bring down payroll by 17%, we can break even here.
Yeah, all of us on the board can still be afloat.
Yeah, all of us on the board are still here, exactly.
When it comes down to reducing costs, payroll is one of the easiest ones to get an instant cost saving,
immediate,
right?
Yeah,
everything else, it takes a lot of time. Sometimes, I mean, everything else can you can have to wait a while to see the returns on that. But payroll, it's oh hey, instantly, starting next week, I don't have to pay this amount.
Yeah. And I know not all companies are like this, but it seems like the majority. They will go at lengths to cut anywhere before they start getting to the people at the top, because it's the people at the top making those decisions, and they're not willing to take I'm not saying everybody. I know there are some companies that will, there's some people that are really dedicated to what they're doing that they actually, I have read, but majority of the time they are the last ones to get pruned. They are the last ones to take a cut or sacrifice for the, for their employees. And I think I think we've lost something, especially these corporations. They've lost something with being in touch with their employees and their whole business overall,
Well, and on top of that, not to just rail on Bungie, why don't we go ahead and shift our focus to Game Informer, the longest running gaming magazine in the United States, which began publishing in 1991, has been shut down by GameStop, the meme stock. GameStop, who owns Game Informer, shut it down. And I was reading this article. The magazine, which also publishes a website, a weekly podcast, and online video documentaries about game studios and developers, they were called into a meeting on Friday with parent company GameStop's VP of HR. In it, they were told publication was closing immediately and they were all laid off and would begin receiving severance. And at least one staffer was in the middle of a work trip when the team was told. Could you imagine? You're not at home. You're traveling for work and you get a message in the company Slack.
Yeah.
That's oh, hey, by the way, the company we work for doesn't exist anymore. The credit card, the company credit card you're using.
Check your Slack.
Yeah, that company's. Yeah, check it. Yeah, right.
Check your Slack.
It's just so wild.
I don't know how else you handle that though. In terms of letting employees know or trying to time it perfectly. I don't think that there's such a thing as timing it perfectly. But also, this is really disappointing to see. I don't think Game Informer has been profitable in a while, but I could be wrong there. But it has been an industry staple for so long, and I can't. It's crazy to imagine that the world now no longer has Game Informer. That's wild.
So this is from Kotaku, written by Ethan Gack. Every URL for the Game Informer website now redirects to the official statement, erasing more than a decade of articles, reviews, and original reports that helped establish a record of the notoriously secretive and volatile video game industry.
The morning of, they scrubbed their site. The morning of. And then the goodbye message, that message that's on their website right now, it looks very much like it was written by AI. I mean, it really does.
All right, here we go. I'm going to read it. The final level, farewell from Game Informer. After 33 thrilling years of bringing you the latest news, reviews, and insights from the ever-evolving world of gaming, it is with a heavy heart that we announce the closure of Game Informer. What a long sentence. All right. From the early days of pixelated adventures to today's immersive virtual realms, we've been honored to share this incredible journey with you, our loyal readers. While our presses may stop, the passion for gaming that we've cultivated together will continue to live on. Thank you for being part of our epic quest, and may your own gaming adventures never end. What a terrible goodbye message.
I mean, like, no one writes like that. Not even me. Like that.
Well, and I'm just like freaking
that very much reminds me of like when I go into a Twitch channel or whatever, and they have like that automatic like AI thing of like, this streamer was like, adventuring on the seas or whatever. That's exactly what it reads like. I mean,
it kind of definitely felt generated. Like there, like Johnny was just saying, kind of read the room. Like, would anybody in that situation actually not address certain issues? A little bit, at least touch on it.
One more thing here from this article. After dropping physical issues of Game Informer from its rewards program, GameStop finally let the publication start selling directly to subscribers again a couple of months ago. It seemed like a new, more independent beginning of sorts, or at least a prelude to the decades-old legacy outlet finally getting spun off or sold.
It was just so weird how they rolled it out. Anyways, like I was telling you earlier, Johnny, I was getting magazines. I was getting them, every quarter or whatever, and then it just stopped, and there was no message of why it stopped. But I did get something like a couple months later. Getting it, hey, here's your digital copy. I'm like, where's my physical copy? I always get these because I'm part of the membership, and they just stopped it. They never informed me. They just said, hey, here's a digital copy. They never explained why I was getting digital copies. It just stopped, and then they had finally, like you were reading right there, like you could actually buy the physical copies again. But it was still just like a shock. Like, what happened? I was getting these in the mail.
Well, part of that might have been COVID. Potentially.
Part of it, I'm sure.
Yeah. Because, like, I know a lot of businesses stopped doing, like, physical things during that time. So, I mean, like, it could have been potentially partially related to that. But then what a lot of companies tried to do is continue being all digital, even after the need for being all digital passed, And, that didn't go over well. I mean, some companies succeeded at it, but, yeah.
As someone who does most things all digital, I don't particularly mind that, but it is, I don't know, it's a bummer. I think back to my first, GameStop membership, and part of it was getting Game Informer every month. That was me growing up. I mean, DJ D and I together in Chicago, where you were getting Game Informers, midnight releases at GameStop. And, I haven't experienced or done anything like that since I moved, which it's been like 10 years now. But just knowing that it's gone is a pretty big bummer.
And also, like, I imagine that I'm not the only one who the only reason I had the GameStop Pro membership was for the magazine, right? Like, I mean, like, the discount was kind of like an abstract, like, thing that I didn't really think about. It was mostly for the magazine. Because the magazine had, like, really good articles, a lot of features. Like, I mean,
I think it was the same for me, to be honest. I think I got it. I think even the GameStop rep, like the guy who got me to get it, was like, you should just do it for the magazine.
Yeah.
Like, that's what's worth it. The magazine's worth it. Which, it's the end of an era. So I think they have their, I think it's effective immediately, so they're not doing another one.
Yeah, no,
like the last one
they
that came
were
out
70% done with the next one, and it's just never going to see light of day.
Not going to have even like a goodbye article. Like, come on.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's really unfortunate, and somebody's going to get those files someday and get those really rare copies, of that unfinished.
I did get an email from GameStop telling me that I could get a $30 gift card if I subscribed to my Pro membership again.
God, today. That would have been a perfect moment
like
for
right
an
before.
Ad. That would have been a perfect moment for an ad for you to be like, you know what I did get today? I got HelloFresh came in today, and if you use our link in the man, we need to write that segue down. That's a good one.
It's almost like you go to the Game Informer website, and then there's a GameStop ad for the GameStop Pro. It's like, hey, Game Informer's no longer with us anymore. But get your GameStop Pro anyways.
Scrubbing their site the way that they did, with like no chance for people to save anything or whatever, or like
Yeah.
even look at it and have any kind of nostalgia or whatever. Like that's just like spitting on it. Like that's just like
Well, we should still have access to all the ones that
insult to
they
injury.
released. You know,
Yeah.
because we have the membership. Like I've literally paid for those in a way.
It's interesting because like with going all digital, it's interesting to see stuff get deleted, right? And it's just gone. For a long time, so when I moved to Japan, I stopped collecting physical anything, and all of my movies and TV shows and games have all been digital. And for a long time, I actually downloaded all of the movies and TV shows I bought, and I kept them on a backup external hard drive, which is a lot, right? I think I have like more than 300 movies in my collection.
It's quite a lot.
And I actually stopped doing it because I was like, it's in the cloud. Like, this is so annoying to deal with all of this. Like, it's not a big deal. To be completely honest, I've considered doing it again after seeing a few things like this where digital libraries and stuff just goes away. That it's like, maybe I should download these files. Either I need to download these files so that I have them. So, like, even if it gets taken off the store, you know, I still have it.
It would only take like one big streaming service or server for these services going down, or just like something big changing in the industry and then just wiping out. Yeah, it wouldn't take long. It really wouldn't.
Or I need to not complain when it happens. Well, you know, I actually already experienced it once. I bought season 3 and season 4 of The Legend of Korra on iTunes back when it came out, which I do everything through Apple, right? And actually, there was a problem with Nickelodeon and season 3 and season 4 of Legend of Korra. They just did really bad. Like season 3 did bad on TV, and then season 4 I think they released straight to digital or something, but they actually took it down off of stores so people couldn't buy it because they were trying to channel to get everyone to go to their website to watch it. So they took it down off of stores, and the only reason, Farm, I was able to watch it was because I had downloaded files of it. Like if you like that I could open up and watch. But like if you went to the store page, there was no season 3 and no season 4. So it actually has even happened to me already. And that happened years ago.
Makes me wish I still had my external drive with all my archived, downloaded Red versus Blue episodes.
Right? After, restrictions got shut down? Jeez. Yeah. Well, and I've got this 8 terabyte hard drive down here that's done nothing but ruin my life.
I was wondering when you could bring that back up. I was like just waiting.
Download everything to there.
Yeah. What you can't download though is all the Xbox 360 games that are no longer purchasable.
Right.
With Xbox 360 going down this week as well. Yeah.
Oh. That's very
it's
true.
it's really scary time to be a digital owner. I mean, like we're seeing all this stuff just disappear.
That if you own it, you should be able to download it.
Yes. Yeah.
But
if you purchase it, but like
still scary because how long will it be until they just like, okay, this is delisted,
right?
Or it's just gone.
Then probably if you have it downloaded, it would still work on your
but you need to download.
Right,
you need to download your files. I'm actually thinking about booting my 360 and downloading all my digital games because it won't be long. And again, though the flip side is, when was the last time I booted up my 360?
The flip side is honestly the same though. Is like if I started losing access to like some of these movies, when is the last time I actually watched some of them? Mm-hmm. And is it really a big deal? Like, and then even like, we talked about investing money and stuff like that. And it's like, would I consider the money I spent and the amount of times I watched it appropriate? Right. Discs don't last forever either.
True.
Right. True. If you buy a DVD or a Blu-ray, they also wear out and have issues.
Especially when your kids jam them into like pianos and all these other things. Like, what are you doing?
God. I can't imagine.
But I mean, like, I don't know, because I keep on oscillating between two extremes of like really appreciating the experience of things, right? And being in the moment and experiencing that, especially with like in real life trips. But I think this could also apply to like seeing a movie or like playing a video game for the first time or something, and like having that initial experience, that initial emotional capture or whatever. But like on the other hand, like keeping it forever or whatever and being able to kind of like re-experience it to an extent, especially like with photographs, and like for trips and everything. And it's just like a really hard place to be because like on one hand it's like, well, that was a really good experience, but how will I remember it as well, Like, I mean, like,
Right.
will I ever go back and play some of those 360 games? I mean, probably not. But I mean,
No.
like,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's like if I wanted to remember them, now I have no way of doing so, you know, beyond like, I guess maybe
Well,
trying to
and
trigger memories by like the
yeah.
Wikipedia article, you know, I mean, like,
Well, and there's something you never know when you're going to go back in a sense, but as far as like collecting, you know, it in a way it's a you can be a digital collector. And there's
yeah,
nothing wrong with that. You know,
yeah.
just because you're not going back and playing it doesn't mean that you can't collect it and eventually let somebody else experience it. I think that's part of it. I mean,
That's true
I
too.
don't
Like
necessarily need to
passing it on
experience
and
that
stuff.
again.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Like,
like
I mean, like
somebody
that's
else
what
could
photo
experience
albums
it.
are for, right? Is essentially to
Right.
pass it on those memories to
Right.
people who didn't have them, right?
Because you
Yeah.
lived those memories. You did,
Yeah.
you know, you were there when things released or when those pictures were taken or those videos were taken. But it's really to kind of like sustain history in a sense, you know, of
Right.
what happened during that timeline.
It's
So, I mean,
interesting because, like, for me, I also have kind of started to not buy things digitally, because I just am, you know, I have Disney Plus. I own all of the Marvel movies up until No Way Home. And I stopped buying new Marvel movies after No Way Home. And before it was like, oh yeah, I got to get it, right? Because I have the collection. But then it's like, you
Right.
know what? Like, it's on Disney Plus. Why am I buying all of these? You know, half the time
Yeah.
I'm just watching it on Disney Plus anyway. Those kinds of things. But yeah, like as far as being a collector and such, it's interesting because like with my son who has a Switch, I find myself going to stores and buying physical games again, which I've not done for myself in 10 years, but for him, you know, there is something he really
it's a
enjoys
different
about it,
element.
and the little cartridge, you know, that he
And when
has.
they get it in their hands and they're like, oh yeah, you know, it's something special just to like get them out and instead of just always just downloading it, you know, it's I still for you know a lot of that stuff's still gone away, but like it's still nice to go to GameStop, you know, from time to time to just you know.
They miss such a huge opportunity. Like, I mean, we've talked about this offline before, but like GameStop had every opportunity to become like essentially something completely different and new, like a communal space for gamers or whatever, and like a novelty place where you could get like gaming related like stuff, you know? Like, I mean, they already had some of those licenses. Like, it wouldn't have taken, I feel like, that much more effort. But instead, they became a Funko Pop store, which, you know, I mean, like, whatever. Obviously that didn't work out very well for them. But like GameStop
'cause that can only
had
take you
so
so
many
far.
opportunities to like actually like pivot, and they just kind of refused to for so long. And then when they finally did, they did it like half-heartedly because they were forced to. And like that ultimately you could tell that it was a half-hearted like pivot, and it's just like it's so disappointing because like both GameStop and Game Informer have been like huge parts of my childhood, right? And like my whole
Right.
gaming, like, you know, life, right? And to see like everything kind of unraveling the way that it is, it's just, well, how long do we have until GameStop just declares bankruptcy and just like disappears? I don't know, you know? I mean,
It does kind of feel like a stepping stone. So unless they figure out something different, like without Game Informer, like that, I feel like we're even like still helping out with like bringing people to the fold of GameStop. You know, without that, they need to figure out something. You know, something different, something unique, something that will bring people. You know, something that touches on the gaming community and that people are losing right now by just staying home and you know doing the digital thing. It's you know it's still good and I get it. You know it's nice to be able, and the convenience is nice to be able to download things and have access when they first release. But there's something special about those midnight launches.
yeah.
There's something special about like LAN parties or like these
Well,
huge
and
parties.
exactly.
Or
Like if they had pivoted to something like that, like hosting more LAN parties or whatever, put a couple couches in there, you know, make it a community space for people who love video games to hang out. Like I feel like that would have been a really cool pivot. I feel like that's something that actually there is a gap there that doesn't
There's a huge gap
exist
for that
really,
right now.
you know? And I mean like yeah, and especially as gaming has become more mainstream, I feel like that would have been a really, really cool move to make. But, you know, I mean
I feel like it would be something that like you said, it's a huge gap in the industry right now where so many gamers, especially after COVID, have become antisocial. And like I think there's a huge thing where we need to branch out and still connect. And GameStop could be the catalyst if they chose to do that. To like actually bring gamers to actually getting out there and actually meeting one another and actually having these really good like friendships you've had over online to actually be able to do it in person, and do these things.
It's really interesting. I feel like for us here in Anav, we are really lucky. Someone used the word blessed that I feel we do have a really great gaming community, playing games together and able to spend time together. And, people will be like, you don't need to be together in person, like Discord, like, look, like, hey guys, it's the visual bit of the podcast. We're looking at each other and spending time together. But there is, but the times we spent together in person have been very special too. Right. And it's not, I don't think it's like this or this, it can be both. Right. But I don't know. D, sounds like we need to start a business. Sounds like we need to start it can't be GameStop. It could be game plop. I don't know.
The game couch.
The game couch. We need to wrap up. Do you guys have anything you want to close on?
Well, I was just going to say, in remarks to what you were saying there, Johnny. I don't think we had to meet, but the fact that we did meet, in person makes it that much more special. And
yes,
do I think we have to? No, but I think it's that much, that next level, that next level.
Being a person who my son and I, my son plays primarily on the Switch, and now I have a Steam Deck. The idea of like going somewhere to play a game and it can just be a chill space and like being able to play with other people actually sounds a lot more appealing to me now.
Mm-hmm.
Of like, because I can just carry this device over there and I can just play and like hang out with people. Like that actually sounds pretty sweet.
Like I'm pretty antisocial, but I think even I would like really actually enjoy like just being able to be in that space or whatever and just like,
tell people to get good.
Yeah.
And speaking of getting good, make sure you give us a thumbs up and a like and all of this stuff everywhere. This is the end of season 3. Check out our merch at store.anavseer.com. How do you spell it? No one knows. Go ahead and Google it. And this is the end of season 3. We will catch you guys with season 4 coming up soon,
where we'll talk copyright law.
Get out of here, Craig.